Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about WandaVision episode 3. It's called Now in Colour, so full spoilers for the episode as always. And this one brought us into the 70s, seemingly, by the look and feel of it.
I'd have said that, yeah.
It feels that way. And the posters for the season, which had like 6 different time periods on it, would certainly imply that we're going to be going to 80s and 90s and 2000s. I'd be curious to see what tropes they use when they get to the 2000s and the 2010s, if we're going that far. Because it's a lot harder to gauge when you're this close to it, I suppose.
2000s is probably far enough removed now that we could do that quite easily, I imagine.
Probably. But yeah, so we are in the 70s and we have the pregnancy, which is what the entire episode really revolves around, is the mystery of it. Well, not so much the mystery. I mean, Vision clearly is definitely curious as to why this has suddenly happened. And a lot of the comedy early on comes from his questions to the doctor without trying to reveal that. Because the doctor's like, it's 4 months, give or take, yeah? And like, yeah, of course, yeah, 4 months. In theory, how big should it be at 12 hours? And, questions like that. So that's where a lot of the humour comes from. It's about sort of getting the baby room ready. There's a new opening title sequence, not for the show itself, but for the fake show. So there's like
I think there's a new one every episode, isn't there?
There probably is, but I mean, I'm pointing out because I think what's interesting about this show is that it's not just an opening title sequence, it's actually a montage of almost the context of each new era that we're in.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, seeing what the neighbours look like now, because they all have different haircuts and so on and so on. So, in fact, hell, Mustache Man might have, again, one of the best lines of the episode. His delivery was phenomenal in his one scene. No?
Which line?
It's when so Wanda's having like the fake contractions, and her powers knock out all the power, presumably in the entire street. And we cut to Anya's house, of course, from the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for anyone who's unfamiliar. And she walks out. Mustache Man's her husband, which I don't think I realised when I watched the first two. It says, do these earrings make it look fat? And then the power goes out, and his deadpan delivery of, thank God. Just crack me up. Again, it's a really old trope. Again, it's this idea of the wife saying, does X make me look fat? And the husband trying to dodge the question. It's a really old sitcom trope that makes no logical sense in a real conversation way. Like, it doesn't work. It's a contrived joke that's written for TV characters. But I appreciate them playing with it in the episode. What sounds super enthusiastic? You've been very quiet and cagey.
Yeah, I think I'm out of this show because this was so light on the stuff that I liked, and it was all just, no, we're just doing more sitcom stuff just in a different time period, and that has very little appeal for me. As I said in the first episodes, that was the stuff I wasn't really into.
There was definitely more of the mystery stuff in this than there has been so far.
No, there was way more in episode 2 than in this. Because I checked because the first time it even has anything is 9 minutes in, and it's when it rewinds Vision's line, and then there's nothing again until 20 minutes. I checked because I noticed, I was like, there's not been anything of the stuff I like.
You actually checked? You checked?
I did.
You checked how many minutes until there was a bit of the actual outside mystery starting to creep in, or the realization starting to happen. For the record, when I'm talking about this having more of, I'm not necessarily saying if you compare raw second to second count, which I didn't even realize was something I'd have to argue against. It was more about the strength of what the actual mystery bits are. The fact that Vision himself is starting to notice things, and that Wanda's having to kind of fudge even what he's perceiving and fudge his thinking, because he's starting to that weird dinner we had with the boss, and then the neighbor outside, which again I could chuckle out of the neighbor, like he's like trimming these hedges, but he goes like halfway through the garden wall. He's like, you went a bit farther with that hedge trim. He's like, oh yeah, I guess I did, Vision, and he just keeps going.
Just carries on, yeah.
Which again, because to me that's not a sitcom trope. That moment, yeah, the howdy neighbor thing is that's Wilson over the fence, but
yeah.
the the not acknowledging that he's went through a wall, or kind of acknowledging it but just continuing as if that's intentional, is veering more into the we're in Twin Peaks kind of something weird, something is not quite right. And I think one of the things that was interesting to me about this episode is what exactly the quote-unquote NPCs of this world perceive, because the later stuff with this neighbor and then what's her phrase, Hans' character, Agnes, when they're outside, and it's a scene where things are cutting back and forth from inside with Monica, and he's out here, and they're being, hey, is that Geraldine in the house? And it's like, oh, she's weird. She doesn't have a family. She doesn't even have a house. And Vision's getting closer and starting to be kind of intrigued by what they're suggesting. What's going on? What's weird about that? And they seem to, like, maybe it'll turn out that everyone else in here is also a real person who is keeping up the charade. I think my instinct right now is that all the NPCs are Wanda's like subconscious that are that are populating the place.
I'm assuming so, which is why they've got some level of awareness when it gets to things like this.
Yeah, because the neighbor even has a line where he's like, because we were all, and then she kind of stops him from continuing. But it was like, wait, are you self-aware? Do you know you're all in this fake world that's only designed to keep Wanda happy? Is that something you're on some level conscious of?
And I don't know what the answer to that question is. Like, that might be what they were going to say, and that could be the case, or it could be just something along the same lines as, oh yeah, they know something, but not quite to that extent.
Yeah, and he said we, and it sounded like he was including Vision in that we. So it's almost like these other NPCs that are more self-aware. Like it's almost crueler what she's doing to fake Vision. If indeed he is just fake Vision, which I'm inclined to think he is just the Vision in her head. That
seems the likely scenario right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the interesting sort of like the mechanical part of how this place is functioning. Obviously, the other more broad strokes thing, which is the big ending, which is Wanda straight up just kicks Monica out when she starts to speculate that she's from somewhere else, that she's not to be trusted, which comes up in a kind of nice way. I thought we actually had her acknowledge her brother who died finally. After what it feels like a long time. I'm sure she mentioned it in Civil War when we saw her again and so on, but
it was probably there in some of the movies. I'm sure
it feels like such a thought we've all just kind of left behind, because no one really liked Quicksilver in Age of Ultron that much. He served his purpose. He died. He was gone.
It was one of those things where, if I recall, I mean, I don't know how confirmed this ever was, but the speculation was always that was part of the deal with Fox at the time is okay, Fox could have Quicksilver, Marvel will have Scarlet Witch, but we're, just let us have this one film to get it all sorted. And so it was never supposed to last, and no one really cared about him that much.
Obviously that's completely irrelevant now because Disney went and bought Fox. So
right, but it was a different time back then.
How quickly things change in the entertainment.
That was
world.
only like what 6 or 7 years ago.
Well, it came out in 2015, so 6 years ago if you're going with the release.
Okay.
Yeah. It was interesting though, but her bringing it up, because it never occurred to me, because obviously there's a whole joke where it turns out to be twins, and again I enjoyed a lot of the humor here where she starts screaming. There's a sort of sweet moment where he's kind of agreed to call the kid Tommy because she wanted Tommy, he wanted Billy. Now it turns out they have two, so they could both get their names.
It's convenient, isn't it?
Very nice. But when she's looking down at the babies and Monica's there helping, and she's like, "Oh, twins. I was a twin," and she starts reminiscing about Quicksilver. I did like that her accent kind of came back whenever she says his name. Her accent shifts back to the Sokovian,
and when she was singing the lullaby as well.
Because I was a little critical of her accent in Civil War. It felt like they wanted her just to shift to her normal, American accent, and the trying to transition it felt a bit clunky, where it just kind of felt inconsistent. I do like the idea though of it's very Naomi on Expanse, where the idea being that when she's around something that either reminds her of home or she's talking, because in that show, whenever she's talking to someone else as a belter, her accent resets back to belter very quickly. Like just naturally she flows into her traditional accent. But when she's with the others on the show, she she has her
Yeah.
it's a real English accent, and in the from a meta sense.
Yeah,
but
it's something we spoke about a lot on that. It's a real world phenomenon. I think it has an actual name and everything. Just the idea of reverting your accent to whatever you had when you were younger, when you were around people who have that accent, or that you knew from that part of your life, or when you're in that place. It's a pretty common thing.
Yeah. So I like the idea of them playing with that a little bit. Let's say we do get somehow Quicksilver shows up, because again, it's all in our head. There's no reason why he can't show up.
Yeah, it's possible.
I mean, Vision's a main character and he's dead, so
it's very true.
There's no reason why we can't get a cameo from Kick-Ass. So
it can't be that busy.
I
can't remember the last thing I saw him in, to be honest with you.
Depends when they shot this. I don't know when when they were shooting this and whatnot. I mean, he's obviously not busy now.
No one's that busy now.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff shooting right now, actually. I mean, slowly, and they're constantly taking breaks because someone in the crew gets something, but there's shooting going on.
Shooting intermittently is how I'd phrase it. Yes.
Cast and crews need to live in a bubble for the duration of shooting. That's just the new system now, until things are dealt with. But yeah, so you have this moment though where Monica, because Monica's like full on character. She's doing like all this small talk stuff. She's been very very animated in her dialogue, and then there's this moment comes where Wanda mentions her brother, and she just sort of, much like Wanda's done a couple of times in the show, she sort of goes kind of serious and less caricature and goes, he was killed by Ultron, wasn't he? And I think that's one of the little appeals of the ongoing shared universe that I think I do really like, is the idea that if I'm comparing this to a comic book ongoing universe, the idea that we can, in a comic book 10 years later, refer back to an event that happened like 10 years ago. It's not quite a decade, obviously, in this case, but the idea that this isn't an Age of Ultron sequel, this isn't an Avengers sequel, it isn't something, we're so far removed from that movie, but the idea that someone just casually brought up, Ultron, as if that was a big event in the world once. And comic books have kind of murked it up to the point where it happens so often that they all kind of lose their meaning a little bit. But with movies, because there's less movies and they have to pick and choose, and maybe we'll get there eventually.
It's still a relatively new phenomena to do.
Yeah, because even if we only get a couple of decades, that's still much less than comic books. Comic books do it almost on a yearly basis, pretty much. So, no, I kind of appreciate that. But this is what tips her off. She notices the sword symbol on her necklace, and the episode ends with her getting booted out of this reality. Notably, when she lands, she's got like some sort of red. This is basically the red magic effect that Wanda has when she's using her powers from the movies. You can kind of see it around Monica a little bit. So, curious. Like if we like continue with scenes with her outside the fictional world now, and the real world.
I wouldn't be surprised if maybe not next episode, but maybe the episode after, if we have an episode set entirely in the real world. Just catch up. What are they doing?
I could see that happening eventually. I wonder if she tries to come back in. Although it feels like Wanda's too self-aware now. I think what's notable though is that Wanda was straight up kind of scary at the end of the episode. I thought when Monica's starting to piece things together, and she's starting to piece together that Monica's like asking questions or knows things, and she gets very serious, and it is kind of scary. And again, it's that kind of thing, because it's in this kind of happy-go-lucky sitcom setting. It has that extra kind of creepy vibe to it of her just suddenly going, "No, I think you should leave." And even that shot, but just as it's changing aspect ratio, when Vision comes in, is like, where'd Geraldine go? It's like, oh, she had to leave. And it just ends in this like quiet, almost horror movie-esque, like, what has she done to her? And all she's done is kick her out into the real world. It's not really that bad, but
yeah, I think she said she had to go home.
Yeah.
Was the line that she used, which obviously plays off nicely for Vision, because he's just had that conversation that she doesn't have a home here.
Yeah.
But like I said, technically, yeah, that is kind of true.
Yeah, technically it works. So, I appreciate all that stuff. And there's a lot of comedy in the middle with the Stark rummaging around. Wanda's powers going haywire as her contractions are starting, and she's trying to cover up and whatnot. And most of that was amusing enough.
Yeah, this was like the vast majority of the episode was this stuff, and that's the stuff I don't really care for. And again, not saying it's bad, because I think it's doing very intentional what it's doing in parodying, these shows, right? But just not for me. But I think at this point I'm realizing that's going to be what most of the show is, I think.
Yeah, I mean, technically majority is true, but I also think you have to keep in mind that this episode, cut out the credits, was about 26 minutes long, and a good 7 or 8 minutes of it was the stuff you like. So majority is the sitcom stuff, sure, but I don't actually think you're waiting that long for the hints and the little moments of reality or the teases and the weirdness.
Maybe not. It felt it when I was watching it, because like I said, I was waiting for it. Was nearly halfway through before anything, and then there was another 5 or 6, 7 minutes before the main chunk of it at the end. And I personally found myself just kind of waiting for this stuff and not really caring about all the comedy stuff it was doing. And I feel like that at this point it's fine that's just not for me, because that's what the show wants to be. And I don't want to, I'm not saying, it should change. It should be more of the mystery and that to please me, because by the sounds of it, most people are quite enjoying the sitcom stuff that it's doing.
Yeah. This just became a thoroughly uninteresting conversation, didn't it? This is just...
Yeah, well, sorry.
Sucking the fun out of everything. Maybe talk about the ad yet. The ad, which this time was the Hydra bubble bath.
Yeah. I was waiting for a while. I was like, how does this link in? I was like, what is this? Well, and then at the end it was like Hydra soak. I was like, oh.
Okay. It was a slogan more than anything. It was basically about releasing the inner goddess and the idea that Hydra kind of brought out her powers with the experiment and stuff. So that makes sense. Again, it was the same actors. Although I don't think you see the guy in this one. I think you just hear his voice. He's just in the narrator. But
yeah, I think so.
But yeah, it was neat. No, I enjoyed the episode. I didn't like it as much as last week's, I don't think. Even though I do think Wanda kind of almost coming across as the villain towards the end of this episode is an interesting touch, and the idea that she is almost villainous to all these other personalities in her head. Again, if you go with the idea that she's almost self-punishing by putting herself in this fake world, so the rest of her consciousness is actually being kind of tormented by her self-destructive, perhaps you might want to call it that, kind of psyche, I suppose, or mentality.
Are you essentially saying it's self-flagellation?
I mean, a little.
Because that's, an interesting take, which I think is a little bit... I mean, maybe you're right, but it's different to, I think before I was more reading it as just purely a coping mechanism, just grief. It's denial of the world, essentially.
Yeah, denial. It's living in the fantasy, and there's that moment where Vision is like starting to figure out and ask questions. He's like, oh, it's kind of weird, and there's something else, there's something more here, and she looks genuinely concerned, and it just jumps back to 20 seconds ago, and he's completely in a thinking. It's like she's had to rewrite how he was thinking so that it doesn't break the illusion, and again, that's kind of unhealthy in and of itself. The idea that the Vision in her head is actually smart enough to act like Vision and start to kind of put things together, only to take away that self-awareness, that humanity from him, is kind of cruel.
It's possible this is in a way how we get Vision back, in the real world as well, as through her powers somehow. If
we do indeed get him back,
if we do, of course, yeah.
See if there's something they might want to do, especially since we only had Vision for maybe 2 movies, really. Before he's dead. Well, 3. Creation in Ultron, he was in Civil War, and then Infinity War was his demise. So he was in 3. But obviously, pretty much all of those were ensembles. So it's not like he got a lot. I mean, he's probably had more focus in this show in 3 episodes so far.
Probably. I did point out that Paul Bettany is the first, and as of yet, I think only actor to appear in the MCU across 3 decades.
Well, I mean, to be fair, WandaVision is the only thing that's happened this decade yet, so it's not
not
a lot of competition, admittedly.
It's not, but I still thought, yeah.
And the only people who will be eligible are the people who were in either Iron Man or Incredible Hulk. They're the only
Yes.
people who are eligible. Or Iron Man.
Well, for another 8 years or so, yeah.
No, just Iron Man 1. Iron Man 2 was 2010. So, no.
Yeah, it was.
It's just Iron Man and Incredible Hulk. Yes, of course, until... But yeah, by that point, if Paul Bettany's still in something, he'll get 4 decades, and 3 decades won't mean anything anymore.
It's very true, yeah.
But, yes, I'm digging the show. I don't want to keep watching it. Whether that's on my own or I find someone else, I don't know. But Connor's been... he's taking his ball and he's going home. So
I just like you said, you said this became a less fun conversation, and I don't want to do that every episode. I feel like you will probably have either more, a bit of conversation, do it with someone else, or even on your own. I don't want to drag it down for everyone else, because I don't want to ruin the fun that people are having.
Never stopped you before.
Look, it depends what they're having fun with. Let's be honest.
The glaring gap before you could even start having a comeback. It's said everything. Everything needs to be said there.
It depends what they're having fun with. When it comes to this, it's not for me, but I don't think it's bad. People can have fun with this all they want.
Yes. I did see one theory online that the Stark and the bunny from last episode might be like the same entity that's like shapeshifting into different animals. I don't know why they jumped to this idea. I kind of love it though.
I mean,
we keep getting more animals.
Why? I mean, I can't say it's wrong because it might not be.
It's a good theory. Although I've got another theory.
Don't you dare.
It could be bunnies.
Right, we're done here.
Bunnies aren't just cute like everyone supposes. They got those beady eyes and twitchy little noses. And what's with all the carrots anyway? What do they need such good eyesight for? Bunnies! It must be bunnies!
You done? Just grateful you decided not to sing it.
I think it's funnier if I don't sing it. I think it's funnier if I just sort of say it as if I'm seriously suggesting this as a straight thought. Alright, that's been WandaVision episode 3. Let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Liking is super important and helps keep all the content coming and lets us find more audience members. And of course, you can support us at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble. So go have a look over there. Twitter @mail_fuzz for channel updates. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?